This meeting is called to order. I will open the public comment section. Sir, if you would step to the podium. And just for the record, just state your name and address.
Bobby Atkins,
Yes, sir.
Carrollville, Tennessee.
Yes, sir. What's your issue?
Okay, I own some property down at Vasper, and it's I own almost about 270 acres. I'm putting a rock quarry in. So part of the property, when I was buying it, one guy had a house on it, and there was power down to it. You all had put the poles in, and it comes off of Shady Cove. There's probably, I don't know, there's probably 4, 5, 6 poles. That's from Shady Cove that's on my property. You all furnished the guy the power, and he paid for the whatever it cost. He gave me a figure, but I have you guys probably know. Anyway, about 6 months ago, I was up there. We're down there working now, but anyhow, I noticed my poles were cut, and I thought it was vandals. So these were all on my property. So I called down here. I said, I told them what was going on. I said, before I get the law involved, I just want to make sure you all didn't have anything to do with this. Oh, no, we would never do anything like that. I said, well, that's good enough. I didn't think you would anyway. And so anyway, so I called the police. They sent a deputy down there, and I told him where the line started out at up there. It's on Sunset Road or Sunset Lane, something like that.
Is this in Campbell County?
Yeah, this in Campbell County.
Okay. All right.
And so anyhow, so deputy went up there and he called me back in a few minutes. He said, I just got some news from these guys that lives up here. He said, CUB cut those poles, and the guy he talked to said he got the wire off of it. They give him the wire. So I said, I felt like an idiot. I said, well, y'all appreciate and everything. I said, let me call back down there to CUB. So I called, and I don't remember who I talked to, but he said, we was getting ready to call you back. Said, we did cut those poles. I said, well, okay. I said, I just want my power put back. And he said, we can't do that. I said, why? I said, this is the most ludicrous thing I have ever seen. Why would, they notched them just like a tree and just failed my poles. And so he said, we can't help you. Said, we'll have to get a cost. I said, there ain't no cost. I said, I want my poles. I want my power restored. He said, said one thing, if this line would have broke or anything, it could knock the power out to other people. I said, well, why didn't you just cut the line right there where it hooks onto my pole or where it hooks onto your pole, the last pole? And he said, we just done it our way. So that's where I'm at. And I want my power put back. I know it hadn't been used in a while, but I'm getting ready.
What's a while?
I don't know. You'll have to check the records. I don't know. I bought the property from the guy.
When did you buy the property?
I bought the property.
If you don't mind my asking.
Probably 10 years ago, I guess, something like that.
Okay. And you haven't had power turned on, or you haven't used it in
No.
10 years? Did the CUB representative, did he explain why the poles were cut?
Well, I think one thing said it hadn't been used in a while. I said, so? I said, why'd you cut my poles for? And give the wire away. I mean, the poles is a big thing.
I don't know that they're your poles, but I don't know. I'm not an expert. What my advice would be is to listen to, this is the man that would know. He's the general manager.
Mr. Atkins, I'm Greg
Fay.
Fay. How are you?
Glad to meet you.
We haven't met before, I don't believe. I'm sorry that we hadn't. But I am familiar with what you're talking about, even though
Okay.
we haven't met. And the board charges me with my authority to operate the company under their policy. So this really would have been an operational issue because it's not a policy issue. So we would have been able to talk about this, and then we would have been very specific about the facts. As I recall, that property was Mr. Hayes's, and he built a house in 2002, which was 18 years ago, and 2 years after he built it, it burnt down, and we put single phase out there to that.
Right.
So that's been abandoned since 2004. There hasn't been, so you never had power there. It was Mr. Hayes that had power there, and there is no longer a residence there. It was an abandoned line, essentially. So for safety purposes, and we don't give conductor away, if he had some type of cable TV or coax cable going over there, that wouldn't have been ours to give away. But we reel all of that back up, and we do scraps, and none of that, all of that is salvaged. So in 2000, I think it was, and I looked it up, you bought the property in 2005. So it had already been abandoned after that. And then in 2014, in October of 2014, you came in and you talked about bringing three-phase to a rock quarry that you want to put in. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Well, that was in 2014, and you want it brought in off of our line, and we talked out there and say, wow, it would be so expensive to the several hundred thousands of dollars to bring three-phase in. We suggested that you talk to La Follette because they had a three-phase right on the other side and in their service area, and they could serve you much better. We called La Follette to make sure that we gave you some good information because we would have to release that to them, and they remember talking to you back in 2014. And then in 2017, you went to La Follette because they've got that on record, and you talked to them about that three-phase, and they told you that you had to bring in to get across the railroad because you had to do a railroad crossing. They thought about maybe $3,000 or $4,000 for that. So have you worked it out with La Follette on the three-phase to bring three-phase into your quarry?
No, and reason being, they said one thing is gonna be, they give me a figure. Anyway,
This was just a railroad crossing that they remember.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about, just, for a permit on the railroad. But, I am looking at a crusher now, it's in Alberta, Canada. But anyway,
But what I'm trying to get to is that you never had power there. You were interested in getting three-phase. We told you we couldn't serve you realistically but it would be a tremendous cost to you.
Yeah.
So years ago, because that's all wooded area out there, and what we would normally do as we would fell a tree, we cut that off because we don't want it falling because it's a liability to us. We've got responsibility for that line all the time because that's our property. So that's why that's cut off because we didn't want that because it went back to 2002. So the whole area was throwed up and essentially haired over is what we talk about. And we couldn't even get a line truck back in there to cut it. So whenever you noticed that they were down, that's what happened, and it happened in 2017. The other thing is, if now you're looking to build and you want to live out there, then you would fall under our extension policy, and we would be glad to talk to you about that. That's single phase, And that's not near the cost of what it would take to get three-phase out there. And we'd be happy to talk to you about that. You just have to come in and we can discuss that, because you haven't done that. You haven't talked about that with us.
When I called down here, I mean, I understood what y'all were saying about, I knew I couldn't get three-phase from you because it was, you know, you told me it's too expensive. But I told you, I just wanted my, 110 put back. I mean, why didn't, somebody at least have the courtesy of contacting me and tell me?
Because there was nothing out there. There is no residents out there. There's nothing out there.
There's an operation
The only
going on.
conversation we had with you was on the three-phase, not the single-phase. None of that would have worked for a three-phase anyway.
I know, I understood all that. I mean, I wasn't even talking about the three. I'm just talking about a single phase for my scale house.
So the first time you come down here is right now. If you called somebody talking about you're wanting power back, that would throw them off because you never had power there, you see. So what I'm saying is we'd be happy to talk to you about what it would take to get single phase out to whatever residents, or if it's a general power, commercial, whatever single phase is, you know, we'd be glad to talk to you about that. But there is no putting back, or there's no taking away from something that you had. That's not the case at all. We can't leave an abandoned line out there. That's the bottom line. And nor do we.
What's your policy on that?
Policy is when I determine it's abandoned, we take it out.
Well, that's what you did.
And it hadn't been in
You
service
followed
since
too.
2004, going to a house that burned down.
Yeah, again, where's the courtesy thing come in? I mean, you can see I have built roads out there. I'm ready to get this thing going, and I don't have my 110 in for my scale house.
And Mr. Atkins, I'm certainly not going to argue with you, but you can understand that if you thought it only happened a few months ago, and it happened 3 years ago,
What
it's
do
not.
you mean happened 3 years ago?
The poles were cut down 3 years ago in 2017. So it's not like, you know, there's a lot of activity up there that even apparently you're aware of.
I didn't. One thing I didn't know. Are you positive about that?
I'm as certain as I can be. Because we do jobs to go out there to cut it down.
There's records of it.
What was the date?
I have 2017 because I don't know that I felt it was important or relevant to come up with a day and of the month. Because it's not relevant to what we're talking about here.
I don't know.
If it was yesterday, it wouldn't be relevant to bringing service back because what was there was abandoned. It was abandoned. And it was all, we couldn't get a truck back there to even pull them.
Well, I've got several dozers there, track whatever.
Which would help in order to bring another line in. If you cleared that line for us to get our equipment back there, it would lower the cost for you to have that wherever you need it, that single phase to be.
I don't think I should have to pay for it. I think y'all ought to have to pay for it.
And that's, I'm afraid we're at odds on that. I don't see it that way. And again, that would be.
That's bad. Don't any of y'all agree? Isn't that bad policy, for crying out loud? Cutting poles that was, what did Walter pay to have those? He told me he paid you all to have that put in.
It was what we call a minimum bill, and we figured the amount of what it would take on a 6-year payback. That's the policy, is what it was then. And obviously he didn't make that because It was only out there 2 years. That's one of the reasons why the policy now is, we don't do minimum bills. It is, we give you for residential, not if it's a general power commercial, but for residential, we give you $2,500 allowance, which generally is one span. And then after that, you're gonna be responsible for, and that has to be paid up front.
Mr. Fate, who owns the poles?
Clinton Utilities Board owns the
Okay.
poles, and we're in our right of way to
So
do
we're
that.
in an easement that we
that's
have a
right.
right to,
That's correct.
and there are poles.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the power was last used at that property
In 2004, the house burned down,
in
16 years ago.
2004, 16 years ago. At what point would you consider something to be abandoned?
Well.
For 16 years, nobody's used it.
Okay.
They're CUB's poles.
I have work going on right there below that last pole. And when I called down here, I told them what I'd found. And I can't remember. I forget a lot, but I thought them poles had just been cut recently, the way whoever I talked to. Do y'all know who I talked to, by any chance, or?
I have no idea. None.
But I think that's just poor, to me, that's poor policy, folks. I mean, cutting going on somebody's property,
But keep in mind, there's an easement. You keep referring to it as your poles and your property, and I can understand that. But there's also a greater public policy consideration that we have a due diligence that we owe, and once those are considered to be abandoned, then if something happened, if those poles fell, and because of those poles failed, because of our negligence, because we didn't exercise due diligence of a reasonable, prudent person, and another party was injured, CUB's responsible for that. And then I guarantee you, Mr. Atkins, at that point, you wouldn't be saying they were your poles, or you'd been saying, why didn't CUB get out there and take care of something that was abandoned and considered potentially dangerous to the public at large? I have nothing but compassion for you, and I am sorry that it happened. And I agree, perhaps, that we'll look forward when we cut down to give people a heads up that we're coming. That may be a sensible policy to adopt.
I think that's the minimum you should do. You should get a hold of the property owner and say, hey, we're getting ready to cut these poles. Do you have any plans or upgrades or whatever? That's just that's a poor policy, folks.
After 16 years, what's the quality of the poles and the line up there?
It depends a lot.
Could they be reused?
Yeah, no, they would not be reused, no.
So you'd have to replace them anyway?
Oh, absolutely.
Poles are like new. I mean, nothing wrong with the poles.
We wouldn't pull a 16-year-old pole and reuse it.
Madam Vice, do you have any thoughts?
If the poles were still there, would you replace the line to give him ones in service, or would you just use the line that's there or put new line up?
Well, I don't know, because we'd have to see. Well, I mean, first of all, I haven't been out there, but my understanding is that the right-of-way is not clear. So that's one of the problems. All that would have to get cleared out. Whether or not the poles could sustain structurally, what's going on down the bottom is different than what's going on up at the top. I mean, we would just have to look at that.
Cut them, we just don't have a feel for what we could have done out there.
No, that's correct.
In any case.
That's correct.
It sounds like to me that you are wanting electricity back at a property that was there years ago, but not recently. And really and truly, I think if you can make an appointment with somebody here to discuss getting that single line, they would be much more helpful than the three of us, because our roles are a little bit different. But I think we have sympathy with you in that you were surprised it wasn't there when you thought it was there.
Exactly.
But we kind of understand about the 16-year gap where we would have pulled those poles at anybody's property. And I agree that maybe, you know, a heads up to the property owner would be a good thing for us to do in the future.
Percent.
But I think that if you could make if you could and would make an appointment with the right person during the day to talk about that single line in, that's really that's the major thing that you're wanting is electricity back to your
Right.
business there. So who would he call to make an appointment with? Who could?
9232, then 457-9232, and they would get you to engineering, set an appointment, someone will come out and talk to you, you can show them where you want it, then they'll work a job up to let you know what your cost will be and associate it with getting power out to wherever you need it that on
Oh,
your
so
property.
you're not, gonna help at all, right?
Well, no, we would help you try to get power out there.
No, I'm talking about the cost.
If is it to a residence or is it to a commercial general power building?
The scale house.
Then the total cost from what it took to wherever we were, our primary was, to run a single phase out to you would be all at your cost.
Your take. What about you folks? Has anybody got anything to add to it? Help me any, or?
This doesn't sound like Greg has deviated from what is normal procedure or policy, so I don't see how we can back up now and say we're gonna reimburse.
Have you ever, has anybody ever, had this problem before? Y'all ever cut the lines on anybody else like that?
Certainly. We do. We do that all the time. The phone company does that. You see half poles all over everywhere. Well, it's just cut in half because they haven't transferred lines, and it's like that for years because they can't leave that other pole up because of the liability that's associated with that. And again, Mr. Atkins, we want to serve you. That's what we do. You know, that's part of the service that we provide. You never had service there, and it's been abandoned for all of those years. So the expectation for that to come back is, I think, reasonable.
I think it's unreasonable to do what you all done. That's what I think.
And I certainly can appreciate that. I mean, I really do. I mean, it's not everybody that comes down here from Campbell County and drives and takes time out of their schedule to meet with the board. And for that, I appreciate it. It shows that you're dedicated. It shows that it matters to you. It matters to us. But put yourself in the shoes of your neighbor. And because of you didn't turn on the power for 16 years and the pole fell down in the middle of the night and something tragic happened, snap, and those people out of power, and that person happens to be you. Now, you'd be here and you'd be yelling at us, well, why didn't we take that down? Because it had been abandoned for 16 years.
What?
Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I see what you're saying, and then,
I mean, the policy was not arbitrary. The policy was not capricious. The policy was put in place for the betterment of public safety. And when you leave something abandoned, just correct me if I'm wrong, if I say something that's incorrect. Did you pay a CUB bill in the last 16 years? Okay. So there was no indication to us that it was being used or intended to be used. And there's a theory in law, it's called statute of limitations. And once something is stale for a long period of time, then you lose certain ability to state a claim. And the reason that that's put into place is to encourage people, if you got a problem, bring it up when the facts are still fresh and still relevant. After 16 years, I agree with you. You know, it would be a nice thing moving forward that we call people when we're, you know, hey, we're going to cut this. You know, that's something we, the board, will take up and discuss. And perhaps the learning point and what we learned from best practices from you coming here and sharing us your story is that policy gets implemented. But for us to come out of pocket to do something that we didn't deviate from, You may disagree with it. You may feel that we owed you a courtesy call, but there's nowhere in our policies that I'm aware of that dictates that. And maybe perhaps that's something we'll revisit.
Well,
But I want you to know, Mr. Atkins, this board is not insensitive. Please, regardless of how I may be appearing to you right now, we all understand your plight and we all sympathize with it. But we're not a court of equity that just moves with the ebb and flows of our hearts. We follow the policies that are laid out, and the general manager implements them.
and I'm fixing to go, so, anyway, again, I don't know why, that was mentioned to me on the telephone when I called here, whenever it was, a few months ago, about that knocking somebody else's power off. I told him, I said, why didn't you just cut the line at the, where it went to that, the lice pole or something other, and just leave, just
Sure.
leave things, that way,
We're responsible for those telephone poles, and when it hasn't been used for 16 years, the job is to go and to make the lines safe again, and that would be to include take down the poles. And I understand, Mr. Atkins, exactly the logic of what you're saying. It makes perfect sense to me. And what it boils down to is a lack of communication both ways.
there was no communication.
Sure, but that, we didn't hear from you either for 16 years, other than a three-phase line that didn't get put in. So there was no interest expressed by either party that line was going to be used, if I'm not correct. You didn't call and say, at any point in time in 16 years, I'm interested in putting power on this line.
Well, I did talk, I had you guys out there
Yes, sir.
on the three-phase, and we looked at it, but
Outside
that,
that three-phase, has there ever been any discussions, phone calls, conversations, or representations by either party, that'd be you and CUB, about using that line again?
no, there wasn't. But again, I don't want to beat to death. We can sit here all night and go back and forth, but.
Yes, sir.
But when I called down here, I thought I maybe talked to the manager. I don't know who, I think I did, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he assured me that they would not do anything like that. And I said, okay, I'm gonna call the police then.
Sure.
And so there's a breakdown somewhere
There is a
here.
breakdown in communication, absolutely. That's how misunderstandings, this is the number one reason for misunderstandings, is a lack of communication, clear and understandable communication. So for that, I apologize, but that breakdown in communication doesn't arise to a level that we've, or anyone violated a policy, or that we're going to monetarily make someone whole when they're following policy. And those policies are in place for public safety and for the overall public good.
Will you call one of the engineers, is that an engineer will you call one of the engineers and get an appointment so they can lay out a plan for what you want?
Yeah, I'll do that, 'cause
In 2017, did you have this rock quarry in mind and were actively working to get it going?
I've had a permit for 12 years, a quarry permit. I just haven't, I'll work a while and at the money pit down there for me, and I'll work a while and then I'll go try to uncover some rock, and that's what I've been doing I've had property since 99, I think.
So in 2017, if we had called you, you would have known you needed that line at that point?
Yeah, I sure didn't want to do away with it, because that was my only source of power in there. And
Of course, 2014, when we talked to you about that three-phase, I can't even remember last week real clear, so I'm not expecting either one of us can remember back that far. But I feel certain, but I can't be certain. I feel certain that if we had an inclination even then that your expectation was to use that line, we probably would have tried to work with you then. We'd have been, you would have helped us to clear that out.
I would have cleared the right of way.
That's what I'm saying. And you wouldn't have found us to be an unwilling partner in all of that. I feel certain that that's the case. But I think at that time, we were both thinking that, I mean, that's a lot of, undeveloped property up there, and you're working on that quarry. I believe our expectation was you need three-phase there, and we thought the best way for you to get that was from the other side, on the La Follette side, that it would be less expensive to do that in order to meet the requirements for the crusher that you needed for that three-phase 4. And then you can always pull a single phase off of that to get whatever you need for whatever other facilities that you've got up there. But if that's not on the table anymore, then, and now you just need to get three-phase up there, I mean, single-phase up there, we'll give you a number on that, and then we'll let La Follette give you a number on that to see if they can pull it for you, whichever's the cheapest way. The only hump on La Follette is that railroad crossing, but you can add that in and then figure out what's the cheapest way you can do it.
Yeah. Well, I'll come down here and talk to somebody about getting that line put back. But I think at the least, you guys ought to help me on that. I know you don't feel that way, but I don't know about the other folks here. I think you owe me that. But anyway, whatever's whatever. Are you on the board? Are you a lawyer or what?
I am on the board. I'm the chairman of the board. My name is Zach Farah.
Okay.
And yes, sir, I am a lawyer.
I heard you throwing them $17 words out there, and but I just figured. I mean, y'all been nice, no doubt about it.
But listen, this board cares about people, and I know that I can come across callous, and perhaps I'm not concerned about your problem. That's not what I mean to be, but we have policies in place to protect the public. We have policies in place to promote the utility. And if I could pinpoint a violation of a policy, then perhaps I'd have some ground to stand on to work with you monetarily. But I don't even know if that technically is even this board's ability to approve or disapprove, because it falls outside, in my opinion, the purview of what we're allowed per the statute to consider and can do, because that would fall under operations, which is beyond the scope of what I'm allowed to do. What I would say, and what I just deeply would ask you to do and to consider, make the appointment. It may not be cost prohibitive, and see what we can do, and then let CUB in conjunction with the other utility, our sister utility up in Campbell County, to give you some ideas of what the cost is going to be.
Again, I don't know. Like I said, the crusher I'm looking at has a generator with it, so I don't know if I'm even gonna need three-phase now or not. But I do need single phase. That's my thing.
Well, we'll work with you on that, and we'll be if there's a way we can cut the line, especially if we're working together, because you've got the equipment up there. If there's a way we can work together on doing that, because I won't charge you any more than the minimum of what I have to do, and I'll commit that to you. It's not that I'm insensitive to that. You need power. I want to see that you get it. You feel like you're you're a little bit disadvantaged here. So if I can make that back up to you, to make you at least feel, well, at least the folks care enough that they're gonna try to work with me on that. At the end of the day, that's my intention, is to get you to say, well, at least I don't feel like they're just don't care or not even gonna try to do anything. Because when we get down to the construction of it, and you sound to me like you're ready to participate in that, then I'm telling you, everything I can do to minimize that cost to you, I'm gonna do.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll see, I'll make a call, get with you folks, and see what we can get worked out then.
I'm gonna
Do
give
what
you,
now?
Okay, good luck with
Well, thank
your
you.
I'm gonna give you my number, if it's all right. And that way, if you talk to them, and you need to call me, this is right into my desk. And you'll say, you remember me? And I'm gonna say, I do. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember you too,
Okay.
because we wanna do all we can do, and at the end of the day, that's what we're supposed to do, you see? And there's good folks up there at La Follette too, and we'll talk to Gary up there, and we'll see who can get you the cheapest,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, that's that railroads.
That's the
All that
problem,
thing.
and we, talk to them about that too, okay? They're good folks up there
Oh,
too.
yeah, Gary, can't beat him, he's a dandy.
Yeah.
Mr. Atkins, has your questions and concerns been addressed? I mean, I understand they're not
Been
perhaps
addressed.
to your satisfaction, but
Yeah, not to my satisfaction,
Okay.
but they've been addressed.
Can I ask one last question?
Yeah.
In the 16 years since power was cut off to that house, do you feel like at any point you have let CUB know that you intended to use or wanted to use that 110 power in the future?
No, I.
Really didn't have any reason to expect anybody using those poles.
Well, but, I mean, I understand that. But on the other hand, there's a thing to me, there's a courtesy thing there. Y'all should have contacted me. To me, this is me, I'm on the other side of the fence, literally, but anyway, y'all should have, somebody should have said, do you have any plans for this line before we cut it? Cause when I called down here, they said we would not have done that before I called the police. So, then when I called the police, and I done told you the story.
yeah.
But, so there's a.
Goes back to the miscommunication, and that's something we're gonna look at, and that perhaps we should have courtesy calls in the future, so.
It's a lot easier to call someone at a residence with a property to match a name and a phone number up with a piece of property, you see? So I hear what you're saying, but it's not like you're gonna call somebody that's at that property, because
Well, I know, but there's a, courthouse, got records in there. Saying I'm on.
they do.
Yeah,
They do.
yeah. So, anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you all.
I hope you have a blessed night and safe return.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the approval of minutes. Minutes have been distributed and been reviewed. I hear a motion to approve the minutes.
I make that motion?
Second.
And a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. We have before us the vouchers for this month. Do I hear a motion for approval of the vouchers?
I make that motion?
Second.
There's a motion, and a second. Anybody got any discussion? Anybody got any questions or? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of monthly reports for the month of January. I will yield to Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always good, and every time it's good, I'm gonna start. And the good news is that we continue to be well ahead of our forecast, which were conservative, but our actual exceeds our forecast in both departments. We're running a very strong net income in both departments, and despite the mild weather, we continue to perform financially very strongly. So, other than the fact that we're fighting the warmest summer that in memory, we're still able to have a strong net income, and we're doing very well in terms of our financial picture. And Dudley, with that taking all the steam out of you, you can add whatever you think's appropriate.
Okay, and for the month of January, the net income was $168,000. That puts us $213,000 ahead of the forecast. I do want to point out, as Greg was mentioning, you know, when you look at these heating degree days, blue is this year, red's last year, and yellow is a 10-year or 15-year average. So when you start looking at the winter, we're low here, we're low there, we're low in January, we're up a little bit in February from last year, but still lower than the 15-year average. So when he says a mild winter, it has been a mild winter. And what has really saved us on our margin is this long-term partnership agreement that y'all agreed for us to sign. Greg worked so hard with TVA on for years and years and years, and that discount has amounted to $617,000 year to date for September through February, and without that, this number would not be as good as it is. And the reason it wouldn't be as good is because of the weather. But thank heavens we had that, and that's helped pull us out. Our expenses, our operating expenses, are about $287,000 less than we had expected also. And that's all I've got on the electric. On the water department, water department net income for the month was $9,650. The actual year to date is ahead of the forecast, $150,000, and that is primarily due to this right here, this $136,000 expenses less than what we had forecasted. A lot less pump maintenance and things like that this year. And when you're dealing with the water department, those expenses can skyrocket real quick, but if you can save $50,000, it makes a big impact on the income statement. Whereas an electric department of $50,000 doesn't impact it near as much because the numbers are so much smaller. But that's all I've got, unless you have specific questions. Both departments are doing quite well.
Dudley, do we approve this? Do you need a motion for any?
Yes.
Do I hear a motion for approval of the monthly reports?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and second, any discussion? Yes, just you two guys. I can't make a motion in the chair, so.
Keep me if it's my
Okay,
turn.
yeah, I'll let you know.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion approved. Project status reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with electric. We're following two projects. These are both budget projects, a capital budget for this year. They're not new to you. We've discussed these before. They're progressing nicely. They both deal with conductor upgrades, and unless you've got a question, I won't belabor either one of these projects.
No, sir. Hearing none.
In the water department, we're tracking, and you may remember this is not new to you either. It's the renovation of the structural part of the wastewater treatment plant where we have our press. I do have something to say about that. As we're remodeling, as we're putting these, what we call W12s, the steel girders that go up, and we're taking off the old ones, we've discovered that structurally there has been apparently some damage that needed to get fixed. When we pulled it down, I took a picture of that thing. It is, I didn't like it at all. It looks as bad as it is. So when we take that structure down, and we're looking at what we're going to bring it back to, we decided that we needed to do renovation on that area, and that's a structural issue. So I didn't. I wanted to get our best that we could working on that. So I asked our engineers through C2RL to design what they felt were the structural addition, and then we asked our contractor to give us a change order on that. So the fee for designing that structural addition was $2,500, and it was $9,956 in the change order from the contract. So that's $12,400 addition, and I only had a $7,900 10% contingency on that. So when all is said and done, we're probably going to be about $5,000 north of what we originally said it was going to be, and that's the reason why I don't need your approval on that. We obviously pulled the trigger on that, but I just wanted to let you know. So that's where we are on the project status for water and sewer. Pending, continues to pend, and unless you've got a question on that, I'm done with the project status report.
Move on to approval of work orders.
Mr. Chairman, for your consideration, which I will be recommending on work order 1150, this project replaces about 0.9 miles of three-phase line number 4 copper primary to a 3/0 ACSR primary conductor. It's a budgetary item. We budgeted $175,000. We look to spend $172,000, but when we put our 10% contingency on that, it brings it to $189,000. So normally we would be bringing you a project that was a little bit closer to what we forecasted it would be, but I'll ask for your consideration approval on work order 1150 for this Kellytown line upgrade. Work order cost $189,904.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final work order is work order 1155. It's also in the electric department. This replaces about 0.3 miles of three-phase number 6 copper with 1/0 ACC, which is all aluminum cable, aerial cable off around Redbud Drive. And we designed this project and we anticipate the cost to be about $74,000. It's a capital budget item, and we had $75,000 budgeted, so we're pretty much right on the mark there. And I would recommend your approval on work order 1155.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both motions carried and are approved, which puts us to approval of award right away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
We have right-of-way crews, and you're familiar with those, and they're expensive. Over the year, they're generally by the hour, and we dispatch these crews, and it's been hard even to get full crews because we haven't been able to be at full staff in our contract right-of-way crews for quite some time. It is an area of angst between us and the Wolf Tree Company. So what we decided to do in order to complement that is we would pull out different circuits. So one circuit of line, another circuit. We had 7 circuits that we were going to bid out separately, which wouldn't be on hourly, it would be really by the mile on how they did that. And we felt like we had a comfortability of what we thought that ought to cost. So of the 7 circuits, we had 10 bidders. We went out and solicited bids from 10. Of those 10, we only had 4 bid, and some didn't bid on all of the circuits. And those circuits that they did bid on, they bid too much money. We were not happy at all with the bids. We are looking to award 2 circuits because we thought that those numbers were in the realm of possibility. But to give you a difference, on one circuit, Wolf, who knows us well, bid $137,000. We're looking to award this bid to ABC company for $34,500. So you can see it's a $100,000 difference. They just didn't want to do it. They didn't have the personnel to do it, is what we're down to. So I threw out 5 of the circuits as a no bid, no award, and the 2 circuits that I am awarding are both to ABC bidders, and you can see their difference between the next close one, closest to them is 172, or rather 177. So we felt like these 2 were in the realm of possibilities, and we look to award those 2. And what I'm doing now, because we got into contract right away for cost, when we always evaluated whether, and it made more sense to contract than to do it ourselves cost-wise. But now I'm getting cost associated with buying our own equipment and staffing it with CUB employees, even though we'll have to hire that. And the cost per mile, if it's this kind of a swing, we may in the future be looking to start the process of rebuilding a right-of-way crew under the umbrella of CUB if we continue to see these unacceptable numbers. I just won't have them do it. Dudley and I will buy a chainsaw and we'll go into business ourselves if it's this kind of money that we're talking about. So all that to say of this of these bids, it's 2 circuits, and those 2 circuits we are very comfortable with awarding ABC Professional Tree Service Incorporated, and I ask your consideration for approving that contract.
Do all those 4 bids represent the 2 circuits?
Well, no, these numbers represent just those 2 circuits.
Is it not a concern that the one that we're awarding it to is so much cheaper than the others?
No, because the one we're awarded to is more than what we want to pay. We think we can do it. We think we can do it for about $6,500 a mile. We're looking, and we thought that would be fair. Our crews, but you take the equipment out, we probably do it for $4,000 a mile. Some of these were asking $28,000 a mile, and so when you look at that $327,000 from Kendall, they are bidding on the same thing that ABC is bidding on, those 2 circuits. Because we had them bid, essentially what I had them do is I had them bid by circuit. Just say each one, but they all didn't bid all the circuits. We've got Electricon, they only bid this top circuit at $65,000 where ABC was at $34,000. So we just pulled out the ones that I thought were reasonable, and that's the only 2 that are reasonable.
Have we used ABC before?
We have, but we know a lot. We pre-qualify all of these people. So, and that's pretty rigorous to go through. So in that, anybody that qualifies to bid, we're going to be happy to accept them as a contractor.
They don't have a hardship clause that allows them to come back and ask for more money if they can't do it for what they bid so low.
No. There is some of that in the hourly, and they really, Wolf has pulled that, but we're trying to be fair to them. The thing is, the market is for bringing folks in. Now it's drying up, So the workforce is difficult to get. So they're paying higher wages, so they have to then fall back. That's why we thought timing, and that's why we asked 10 to bid, because if someone had some free time, then we thought we could get a good number. We're not thrilled with this 80,000, you know. It really ought to be in the $60,000 range, but it's close enough that we think it's worthwhile doing. But the others were just
I hear you.
unreasonable. We're just not going to do it.
These guys are getting like OPEC, these tree cutters.
Right.
I mean, they're just,
That's right. Which is why I think, and again, there's pros and cons, because you've got the liability of the workers' comp, issues and going and all of that. I mean, this is tree trimmers, dangerous job in some respects, that more accident prone, not deadly, but there are a lot of accidents with tree trimmers, and they generally, if they're any good, they're looking to do something else. You say, we used to pull a lot of the linemen out of our tree trimming crew because they've already shown that they're not afraid of heights. But we're going to start looking at whether or not to introduce what I like to make contributions. My contribution will probably be, because I'm going to have it in this budget, I'm going to have a truck and a trimmer in that, and we're going to start easing back in. If I have to do it one crew every year or one crew every other year, in order to start bringing these folks back online to
do this job
work
ourselves.
against. That's right.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion approved. Other business?
Yes, sir. I met with Dr. Harrell this week, and she asked me to read the following letter, which she dated March the 10th, 2020. It's a very good meeting. Penny has been an outstanding board member, and I just hate to see her not lending her skill set to this board. But her life circumstances have changed, and her residence has changed, and because of that, she wanted to devote herself to this next chapter in her life, and therefore, I'll just read her letter. Dear Mr. Fay and CUB family, on this day 4 years ago, which was the 10th, I attended my first CUB board meeting as a board member. I had no idea the struggles and the rewards this position would provide me. It's been a learning experience for me personally and professionally. I'm sad to inform you that life has brought about changes, and I'm resigning from the CUB board effective immediately. It has been a privilege to serve as a CUB board member. Together we have been through laughs and tears, short meetings and extremely long meetings, battles and victories. I truly consider CUB family. If there's anything I can do in the future to assist you and my family here at CUB, please know that I'm here for you all. Again, thank you for the opportunity to serve over these last 4 years. Respectfully, Penny Harrell. So, I've spoken with the mayor also, and I know it's his intention to appoint another member to fill this slot at the earliest possible date. So we'll look forward to breaking in somebody else new. Now, item 2 that I have is I wanted to let you know that CUB was recognized by the Arbor Day Foundation, which is headquartered in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's recognizing CUB as a Treeline USA utility for the 19th consecutive year. CUB, which was represented by Greg McAnally, who's our on-staff arborist, and he participated in the Arbor Day celebration that they hold in the city of Norris every year. I think they're into 40-some years, because they were the first tree line city in the U.S. And CUB has been and is committed to the high standards of that quality tree care and the best tree care practices. I was pleased to host this past Tuesday the Anderson County Leadership Class of 2020. Had about 20 participants, and I put together a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm getting better at every year, by the way, highlighting some of Cub's significant accomplishments and our cutting-edge technology. And we also took them on a tour of our operations center, and they were here several hours. It was a very interactive. They had a lot of good questions, and that afforded me an opportunity just to bore them to death with the multitude of answers. It's part of our commitment to try to shape the image, and I appreciate Rick Meredith working with us in the chamber, because I think it's a very positive thing for them and for us. I recently returned from Washington, where I met separately with Senator Alexander and his staff, and Senator Blackburn and her staff, as well as Congressman Chuck Flashman and Congressman Tim Burchett and their staff. I was the lead representing both APPA, TVPPA, and TVA in that, and I enjoyed that interaction, and also trying to promote the public power model and to get their commitments to support the non-divestiture of TVA, because once again, the administration has put that back on the transmission assets on the chopping block. What's made it different this year is the contract that we just signed months ago, because now we have standing in the court and we have protections on rates, and therefore it becomes a less of a for sale sign for TVA. So I'm very happy about that, and I think of the 150 some power distributors, I think we're up to 140 some now that have signed. I think KUB is about to sign, which is the same thing we signed, which is what Dudley showed you. We're $600 and some thousand into the good. KUB's monthly difference would be much greater than that, so you can imagine how much was left on the table by not being prompt and signing. So, very positive. I wanted to let you know Terry Benjamin, who has been a long-time part-timer here at Cub and a full-time employee at the city, he unexpectedly and suddenly passed away last week. His wife Emma is a full-time cashier here at CUB. For those who knew Terry, he was a wonderful person, a wonderful man, and I believe Clinton is less because he's not in it. What a great guy, and he'll be sorely missed. And over the past month, the Clinton City Council received 2 letters. One letter was signed by Chris and Linda Leon, and the other was signed by Lori Wilson. In addition to their primary topic, which was the Clinton football field house, both letters raised concerns about CUB dealing with residential developers. I provided you with hard copies of those letters. The Clinton City Manager Roger Houck has told me about a meeting that he had set up with both parties tomorrow morning. I asked him if I could be president at that meeting, since CUB was mentioned in those letters, and that way I was looking for an opportunity to address any specific concerns that they could raise or address, when appropriate, my ability to provide facts to counter any hearsay or organized disinformation that they may have. And in preparation, because we also talked about my presence at the city council meeting, I'm doing, and Roger said that they could accommodate a PowerPoint presentation, which now I'm the king of. I'll go back, and part of what we're going to do is I've got a clip from when Mr. Hollingsworth was here, and he thanked the board and he thanked me personally twice for being so accommodating and how much he appreciated, and kudos to us, and we've gone right down the middle of the fairway, is the way he put it, from having too much or having not enough, that we were perfectly right down the middle, and he was going to do all that he could to encourage other developers and sing the good song about how Cub has put these provisions in place that are nothing short of what any developer will need. So that'll be part of the reminder that what I think is probably the most visible developer in this issue, words from his own mouth may serve more than 1,000 words of what I could say. And I'm working on that, and if you like, before we get through that, I can roll that over with you just a little bit, Zach.
Who are these two folks? What, are
They-
they builders?
Well, there is a tie with the real estate. Well, as you've read, Steve, they're very well constructed letters. I mean, I think they articulate their position very well. It's a hard jump to go from a field house to Aspire Park. It's a hard jump to go from the field house to a residential subdivision in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. It's a hard jump to go from the primary field house to Clinton ought to be annexing, and it's a hard jump to go from that to where CUB is the problem. That's right. For there are no rooftops.
I guess I'm a little disappointed that the word hasn't better gotten out of the changes that we implemented.
I am not convinced that it hasn't. I mean, you want to talk to some of the developers, and they are very positive. And
Mr.
these-
Duncan seems happy.
Mr. Duncan is happy. You know, as far as I know, Ms. Hicks is working with us right now
Right.
On a big project, and I don't know that Joe himself would say different than what he said up here, maybe. But I think there are other things in play. You know, I mean, they're very similar in tenor and tone. So I don't know that there's other things in play for annexation. And again, at the end of the day, in terms of sewer, we didn't accommodate what it was that they wanted. And I don't know if there's any of that playing back. I know that very much in that field house, there is the Hollingsworth Corporation is very much tied into that, you know. So I don't know, but I do know in the morning at 9 o'clock, I'll be on the other side of the table, ready to do all that I can to change the narrative for these two folks here, if nothing more than to gather information about what it is that either they personally find or either it's hearsay. And I'm going to bring material with me to leave with them that hopefully they can then be ambassadors if I can convince them that here's where we're at and here's what we're doing.
Have these two letters been presented to city council?
Everybody has a copy, and it's going to be addressed at the next city council.
So city council will in a sense take up the cross and defend CUB as making progress in these areas?
That is correct, and that is why in the role as vice mayor, I've asked our city manager to ask our general manager if he would attend and represent CUB and give a presentation or provide information to the council as a whole as to what the changes were made. I'm disappointed that there's this level of disinformation out there. I tend to agree with Mr. Fay that I'm not sure that we haven't done a good job of getting it out there. Perhaps people don't. I don't know why. I hope that we can clear. I understand that the other council members know these individuals personally and have reached out to them in private to explain the position and to their satisfaction what I was told. I have not spoken to either. I hope to speak to them hopefully at city council. I'm disappointed because I don't feel that the letter accurately reflects the work that this body did and the things that we put in place I mean, that was a lot of hard work that every one of us was a part of. And it was a struggle with management and with the board, but we worked together, we pulled together, and we did something that I felt was an improvement for Clinton and for CUB.
I can't imagine a reasonable person seeing it any other way.
Jim, progress forward to develop the community's confidence is slow and difficult. Whether it's facts or fiction, step backwards come much quicker and much harder, or much easier.
Correct.
So, yeah, we need to fight that,
Well, and even
perception.
this tension between talking about whose responsibility it is for the locker. There's a statement, if it's true, why don't we consider purchasing the facilities from the city? Why don't you? That's not the city's purview. I mean, there's so many statements in here that,
Well, they talk about rent and there is no rent, you know.
yeah, it's just unfounded statements. And it is well put together. I just wish that more of it was rooted in either actionable items that we actually can take as city council. I mean, city council can't build them a football stadium, and CUB can't build them a football stadium or a football locker room. You know, it's not what we do. However, I digress.
I'll be there tomorrow, and because my attitude is there's concerned citizens that
Sure.
that have a legitimate opinion, and I'm going to try to drill down a little bit on what's behind that. If it's hearsay, if they were misinformed or encouraged, to include that in their letter, and what can we do to help provide them information that should counter that.
And last thing I'll say about this is I applaud anybody that reaches out. We need this type of communication. So the individuals that wrote these, thank you. And I look forward to addressing them. I look forward to answering their questions,
Sure.
hopefully to their satisfaction. We need citizens to be engaged. We need citizens to ask questions. We need citizens to interact with their governmental leaders, and we need more of this so we can clean up some of the miscommunication. So I look forward to addressing their concerns. And
That gives you an opportunity to clear up some things.
Yep.
Maybe 2 years ago, this letter might have been factual, but it's so not factual now that maybe they don't know. So will you let us know how this meeting goes? Because they have made some pretty big negative, untruthful statements about
Right.
CUB.
They sure have.
Yeah.
The final thing that I have, Mr. Chairman, is you have a copy of a plat provided by Mr. Shattuck, and he is preparing to sell or develop a piece of property located in South Clinton, which is adjacent to a ridge line owned by Cub. Now, this is the property where the line goes down to the wastewater treatment plant. So you look, it's in the flat, and then it goes straight up that ridge. And their property is at the top of the ridge. It's a pretty steep ridge, too, by the way. They have property up there. That's the property that we're talking about. And over the years, as Mr. Shattuck tried to level his property, the excavation of that property, the dirt involved in that was pushed, and it was pushed to the ridge line. So it goes over the ridge, and the dirt goes over the ridge, and what happens is they actually push that ridge line out with that excess excavated dirt. And now he's trying to subdivide that, and you got to get the pins, and the title goes, the pin goes to the ridge line. Well, the ridge line's moved now, and you see where it is. It's feet and all of that, and it's 0.11 acres because the greatest width is not hardly 50 feet on the point that you see there going out, because that's where the dozers push the dirt. So it has, there's no accessibility to that other than through his property. And what he's looking to do now is to properly pin this thing to make all of those things work and to get back to now what is the pushed ridge line. Now, that has no value that I can see at all, this excavated dirt now, and nor any value to Cub or any value to Cub now or in the future. Our policy for disposable, for the disposition of surplus property gives the general manager the authority to waive the requirement for appraisal if he or she finds that the property to have nominal value and the cost of obtaining an appraisal would not be justified, and that the board can authorize the disposal of real property without the necessity of payment to Cub, except as otherwise provided in this section. This falls under that. It's essentially moving those pins to meet a new ridge line. So I'm going to ask the board to give me the authority to sign the necessary paperwork to convey this property, stipulating that Mr. Shattuck will be responsible for all the legal fees and any other filing fees and recording fees necessary for this transfer.
Do I hear a motion for authorization for general manager to take said action?
So made.
For a second.
Second.
Hearing a motion, second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion approved.
Thank you. Judd, you can get that worked out, finished. That's it.
Okay. I will have a motion to adjourn.
There we go.
So moved.
So moved.
There we go.